Okay, good evening everyone and welcome as we have our normal shir, which is Pirkei Avos tonight. However, with 2 weeks before CHANUKAH, I decided we'll speak about CHANUKAH this Monday night and next Monday night as well, Be'ez Hashem. So this shir tonight is called A Spark Amidst the Darkness. And we'll try to learn from the lessons of CHANUKAH, the neros, the candles, the beautiful light that will radiate in our homes throughout the entire holiday, exactly where that light is radiating from inside of ourselves. There's a world famous question when it comes to CHANUKAH. And this is the question that is asked by the Beis Yosef, Rav Yosef Cairo. And he asked the following. We know that we have 8 nights of CHANUKAH. That's our holiday. And of course the answer the Gemara gives is because there was 1 flask of oil that was found. The Greeks had come into the Beis HaMikdash, into the temple. They destroyed everything down to the ground. They destroyed all of the kelim, all the beautiful vessels filled with kedusha and holiness that was made by the hands of the Jewish people. And they came to the menorah, which represents the light and the holiness and the sanctity of the Torah, and they destroyed it, they broke it. And then they came to the oil. And the oil flasks have to be pure. And they went around and they speared or they flasked every single one that was there to make sure that it was ruined, that there was a seal of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, covering every single one. And each one got ruined by the Greeks to make sure that the oil would be tamei, would be impure, and they would not be allowed to use it inside the Beis HaMikdash, inside the temple. The Jewish people win the battle against the Yevanim, against the Greeks. They restore all of the vessels to the rightful place. And now they are ready to light the menorah once again after all the hands of evil had wreaked their havoc. And they're searching around inside of the Beis HaMikdash, inside the temple. Where could they find some oil, some pure olive oil with the stamp of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest? And they search in every corner and every crevice. They search every single place, nothing to be found. And finally, like a miracle in and of itself, they look and they see 1 little tiny flask of oil. And they lift it up and they see, lo and behold, the seal of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, is still on it intact. No damage at all. And they decide they're going to light the menorah for the first time after all of these dreaded years, where the wicked Greeks had been inside of their Beis HaMikdash, doing all of their impurities. And they said, listen, it takes 8 days to produce brand new, pure olive oil, where they had to go far away to bring it back. It will take 8 days altogether. We only have enough oil for 1 day. And they said, let us light for 1 day. We'll get the mitzvah now. Who knows what HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do for us? And they pour the oil into the bowls there on top of the menorah. And sure enough, as we all know the famous story, there was only enough oil to last for 1 day. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a miracle. And it lasted for 8 days. And therefore we celebrate this beautiful Yom Tov, this holiday, this festival of lights, 8 miraculous days for the miracles of the oil that burnt much longer than it was supposed to. Ask the Beis Yosef the following question. They found enough oil to last for 1 day. So day number 1 is really not a miracle. For day number 1 had enough oil to burn for that day. The fact that the oil burnt for an extra 7 days, that's the miracle of CHANUKAH. The miracle is 7 days of light extra added, more than was supposed to be. Day number 1, that's derech hateva, that's the nature of the world. There was enough oil to last. So why do we celebrate CHANUKAH for 8 days? To commemorate the miracle of the oil, when the miracle of the oil really was only 7 days. Day number 1 was a given because that's the oil, there was enough to burn. And the Beis Yosef and many others come, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of answers to this question. However, the Meiri, who was one of the Rishonim, a much earlier commentator, he really asked the same question in the Gemara that speaks about why Chanukah is 8 days. And he answers, you know why we celebrate the miracles of Chanukah for 8 days and not for 7? Ki etzem mitzias hapach, because the finding of the flask of oil itself, sheloi nidmo, that was not impurified and defiled by the hands of the Greeks, hayanes, that was a miracle in and of itself. The fact that the oil remained after so much had gone on inside of that Beis HaMikdash, they brought chazer, they brought pigs on the altar to bring them as korbanos, as sacrifices. They stood up slumim, idols inside the Beis HaMikdash that people should come and bow down to them. You had Jews that were running around, becoming like the Greeks, assimilating left and right, day and night, beyond control. The Jewish people had lost their faith. They had lost their religion. They had lost their connection to Hashem. And in the impurities and the defilement of the Greeks, when they came to destroy the Beis HaMikdash and run it down to the ground in spirituality, the fact that there was one flask that was left, that was pure, undamaged, holy as could be, the Greeks, in all of their destruction, they missed that one flask. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved it. That itself is a miracle that deserves a day of Chanukah for us to commemorate and to celebrate, to give haydais u'lahalil, to give gratitude and praise to Hashem, that He never forgets about His nation. The glow of the light, the radiance of the neshama, the purity of the Torah, the eternal chain of Klal Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even when there's battles, and there are wars, and there are enemies on all sides trying to destroy us, and make us not the people, not the nation, not the holy nation that we're supposed to be. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't worry. I'll never forget about you, as long as you never forget about me. And that's why the Chashmonaim, the great Maccabees, they will go down in history not as basketball players, not as soccer players, not as javelin stars for the Israeli Olympic team. No, those are not the Maccabees that we are describing here tonight. The Chashmonaim, they were warriors of Hashem. They believed in the Kiddush, in the holiness and the sanctity of the neshama of the soul. They believed that beyond the shadow of a doubt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will never abandon us, as long as we don't abandon Hashem. And the sparks of Kedusha, the sparks of holiness, the sparks of radiance, the sparks of the light that resonates inside their neshamas. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm going to make a miracle for you. When you will walk back into the Beis HaMikdash, into the holiest of temples, and you will reconstruct and you will refurbish all of the kelim, the vessels that have been destroyed by the hands of these Greek men, these soldiers who sought to take revenge against the holiest nation of the world and tried to remove us of our Torah. When you will search for that one ray of light amongst the darkness, when you will look for that beacon of hope after all of the tragedy, when you will try to find meaning in a world that has shown you such impossibilities, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you made efforts for me. You revealed the sparks of Kedusha, of holiness inside of you. I will save that one flask nobody will touch it. It will be nobody will see it, nobody will know. So that when you want to come inside the Beis HaMikdash and light the menorah anew, and bring the radiance back to the Jewish people, bring the light of Torah, the light of mitzvahs, the light of Kedusha, the light of sanctity, of holiness, the light of hope and of our dreams and our aspirations, that our nation will rise once again over the drama and the tragedy and the hardships that the nations have put us through. You'll find one little flask. And from that flask I will make a miracle, says Hashem. And that miracle will be, the light will burn on and on and on until you can refill it with more incandescent rays of the Kedusha and the purity of the new light of the menorah. Says the Meiri, you know why we celebrate 8 days of Chanukah? Because the first day itself is nothing short of one of the greatest miracles of all time. That in a world that was filled with impurity, and a world that was filled with our enemies coming against us, trying to wipe away every vestige of our Jewish identity and our Jewish lifestyles and our Jewish homes and our Jewish beliefs, the Chashmonaim, they never stopped fighting. They never stopped believing. They never stopped standing up with pride for what it means to be a Jew. That great neshamas, those lofty souls that they had, were shining their light into this world. And therefore, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I also will shine a light into this world. Go and look for the oil and you will find it. Nobody else saw it. All these angry Greeks with such hatred in their eyes, going and destroying every single flask that crossed their path. How did one little flask miss their eyesight? Because when you do for Hashem, Hashem is going to do for you. Chanukah is the Yom Tiv, where we celebrate the light of Klal Yisrael. We celebrate the light of the Jewish people. We celebrate the holiness and the purity that resides deep inside the well springs of each and every one of us. As the Pasuk says, Ner Hashem, Nishmas Adam. The soul of a man is the Ner, is the candle of the Ribbono Shel Olam, of Hashem, the master of this universe. The soul of a person is like the candle of Hashem. Chayfes kol chadrei batan. It begins to search all of the innermost parts of the person, of their neshama, of their life, of this world, and everything that we know. When the neshama of a human being, when the neshama of a Jew, that lofty soul that Hashem has given us from birth, when it begins to look inside of itself and sees all the glory, all the greatness, all the strength, all the potential, all the kedusha that resonates inside, so that it becomes like the eyes of the Ribbono Shel Olam in this world, and it sheds light into the darkness. It sheds meaning into that which is unclear. It straightens out that which is crooked. Nishmas Adam, the soul of man, is the Ner Hashem. It's the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the light that is there inside that menorah, that the Chashmonaim restored. And they brought light after light, miracle after miracle, hope upon hope, is a symbol of the great, pure, radiant neshamas of the souls of all of Klal Yisrael. And when we stare at those candles on the nights of Chanukah, each night another one, as the Gemara tells us, Beis Hillel says, you must add a new candle every night, Because Ma'ilin b'kodesh ve'ein maridin, we always go up in the world of Kedusha, of holiness. We never go down. We're always trying to grow, to improve, to expand our spiritual horizons. Ein maridin, we're not interested in going down. A Jew is always trying to go in the up and up. And when a person lights those candles on the night of Chanukah, one night, and then two, and then three, every night, more lights, more radiance, more candles, more flames, more sparks. So we have to keep in mind that the Ner Hashem is Nishmas Adam. Hashem's candles, that's our souls. Our souls are filled with so much Kedusha, so much beauty, so much glory, so much kindness, so much mercy, so much love and amunah in the Ribbono Shel Olam, so much understanding of what our mission, what our task is here in this world, so much faith that can never be bent under the pressures of world policies and everything else that is caving in around us. Nothing will bend the Jew. Because the candle of Hashem is Nishmas Adam, is our soul. That means that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bring light to the corners of this universe that are enshrouded in darkness, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to walk into that darkened room where there is sadness, when there is affliction, when there is difficulty, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to shine light into that person's life, Nishmas Adam, the soul of man, is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses to illuminate this world. But we have to know what we have inside of ourselves. If we don't know what kind of a candle we have, if we don't know what kind of a flame that we have that flickers inside of us, if we don't realize the koiches, the great potential that lies inside the hearts and the souls and the minds of all of us, if we are disconnected and we are unaware of how great and how gigantic and how magnificent the grandeur and the glory of our neshamas are, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu lifts up his candle and he tries to strike that match. But there's no light. There's no flame. There's no fire that is there to be seen. But when we understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light in this world is our neshamas, is our souls, we are like the eyes, we are the vessels in this world to allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu to spread all of his goodness. And we work on bringing that forth inside of ourselves. So then when we look at that menorah on Chanukah, and we see every day climbing another candle, another candle, another candle, that's another chelik, another portion of our soul that is radiating into the darkness, into the afela here in this world. And if we use the Yom Tov of Chanukah in the right way, we will be so surprised inside of ourselves just how much we could grow. Besides our belt size growing on Chanukah, from all of the donuts and all of the latkes, and all of the roasts and all the Chanukah gelt, besides the growth in the physical realm which we exist in, the greatest growth that a person is supposed to make during Chanukah is, how much is my neshama going to grow? How much am I going to see it? Will I feel it? Will I know it? Will I be aware of it? But when we tap in to the power of the Chashmonaim, who gave up Mesiras Nefesh, great sacrifice for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They were willing to stand in the face of the evilest of nations, the strongest of powers, Western Greek culture and society with an army that could put all of the other nations to shame. It was the Ruach, the spirit, the atmosphere in the air at that time was the Jewish people were leaving by the droves their Yiddishkeit, running into the world of Greek ideologies and society because it looked so fascinating and so curious and so fun. There was excitement that was there. But the Chashmonaim said, no, you don't understand. How will HaKadosh Baruch Hu see in this world? If we extinguish the flames of our Kedusha, what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to do? If we blow out the flames of our radiant neshamas, how is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to lighten up this world with illuminance and radiance? And therefore, against all odds, they stayed strong and firm in their faith and their belief, connected to the principles which bind us to Har Sinai, believing in all of the words of the Torah and HaChachamim Zichronim Livracha, and they said, we will not bend, we will not waver, we will not fall by the wayside. Rather, we will stand up strong. And our neshamas, our souls, they will bring forth the light here into this world, and we will conquer our enemies. Says the Meiri, you know what the great miracle of the oil is? The miracle is that although the world was in darkness, and Klal Yisrael looked like they were near destruction, and the Greeks were so powerful and so mighty, destroying everything they could get their hands on in the Beis Hamikdash. Since there was a flame that was burning in the hearts and the souls of the Chashmonaim, it allowed one little flask of oil to remain. And that one little flask would end up lighting the menorah once again inside the Beis Hamikdash, and it will be a light unto our nation. That we would remind ourselves that Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, the candle of Hashem, is the neshama, is the soul of Klal Yisrael. The soul that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us from on high, brought it down into this world to light up the world in everything that we do. But we have to remember what we have. We have to keep, as Rav Yisrael Salanter writes, everybody gets inspired at different times of the year, different times of their life. Person goes through a ne'ilah, they're screaming the final moments, Hashem Hu Elokim. Goosebumps running up and down their spine, their hair is standing on end, tears are falling out of their eyes. And they tell themselves, I'll never be different after this. I'll never go back to where I was before. I'm going to become a better person this year. And they try and they try and they try. For about 3.5 minutes after Yom Kippur is over. And then they fall back into their old patterns and their habits once again. However, that inspiration and that elevation, that surge of spiritual energy that the person had, those insights to their life, that's real. How's a person going to get it back? Says Rav Yisrael Salanter, if you've ever been by a fireplace, you see sometimes the fire is burning bright. The wood is crackling. The heat is giving off. Everyone is gathered around, is keeping warm. Maybe there's some fragrances, some pine wood. It smells so good, invigorating. But as that fire burns on and on and on, the flame begins to dissipate. It begins to run down. And you look inside the wood that is left, and all you can see is some embers glowing deep inside the coals of the wood that is there. So what do? You get out the bellows. You get out this big apparatus that is like an accordion, and you blow wind inside to the embers, inside to those flames, and suddenly, shoo, the fire comes anew once again. You throw another piece of wood on, and more flames, more fire, more warmth, more fragrance. And you keep with those bellows, and the fires are getting bigger and bigger, once again like they were when the fire was raging in all of its glory. Says Rav Yisrael Salanter, the same is true with our ruchnius. We have moments in our lives where we are inspired, we are elevated, we become these lofty spiritual beings that we say we never want to go back to where we were before. We want to be great. But then, as we know the nature of the world, the flames begin to go down. The inspiration begins to wear off. There's so many other things in this world for us to get busy with, to get distracted from constantly. And so all those goosebumps, gone. The tears. I was crying. Me? I wasn't crying. Me? Yeah, I was moved by that drasha. No, I wasn't so moved by that drasha. I told myself during the Elul, I'm going to change this here. No, that's not me. I'm not that kind of a person. Says Rav Yisrael Salanter, at certain points in your life, you have to get out the bellows of ruchnius, of spirituality. And you have to blow the life back into yourself. And when you do that, then the flame renews once again. The inspiration, the lofty ideals that you had at that time, suddenly you're like a young man once again with vibrancy. And you're ready to go tackle the world in ruchnius, because once again you are enlivened by the fires of Kedusha that are radiating inside of you. But you have to do the work. You have to make the effort. We have to try. And if we will try, and if we will recognize the neshama that's inside of us, this powerhouse soul that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has designed so perfectly to allow us to fulfill our mission here in this world, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you do for me, I'm going to do for you. You light up your light. You light up the bundles inside of you that have darkness. You make the hallways that are enshrouded in the dark of this world. You bring some light over there. Maybe it's just a little night light, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't care how bright it is. You're trying. You're making the effort. You're putting in the work. You're bringing the bellows inside, and you're blowing the sparks of Kedusha once again. I can make miracles for you to no end. Because when you give me eyes to see and you let me light up this world, I will illuminate your world as well. I davened in a minyan tonight for Marav, where I rarely ever daven. And even when I do daven there, I have a certain place that I usually sit. I never ever sit in this particular seat. And as I sit in this seat waiting for Marav to begin, I look next to me and there is an old, worn-out storybook by Rav Pesach Kron. I said, you know what, Hashgacha, here it is, I'm giving a shir tonight on CHANUKAH. I have some stories in mind already, but let me take a look. Let me see, perhaps I'll find the beautiful story that he writes inside of there. And so I open up the book and I look, he has an index of different topics, CHANUKAH. And he tells in here one of the most famous, most beautiful, inspiring CHANUKAH stories that I could share with you tonight. He said about 100 years ago, there was a very poor rabbi from Yerushalayim, from Jerusalem. His name was Rabbi Lipa Kalashevsky. His family was poor as could be. They had debts over their head already. and his parnasa, his livelihood, was meeking out an ikar living. It wasn't working. And he had no choice. He had to travel abroad and try to find some people that would help to support him. He had to ask for tzedakah, as uncomfortable as it was. He boarded a ship and he traveled to Milan, Italy. And he arrives at the dock on Erev Shabbos, Friday morning, late morning. And it's hours before Shabbos, and he must begin to find a place to go. He doesn't know anybody in Italy. This is the emunah of a Jew. He travels from Jerusalem all the way to Milan, Italy, doesn't know a soul. He arrives on Friday, doesn't know where he's going to go, but he trusts in Hashem. Hashem will take care of him. He takes his meager belongings with him, and he starts walking where they direct him, where the Jewish community might be. And as he's walking, deep in thought, davening in his head to Hashem that he should find the right place, suddenly a beautiful carriage pulled by strong horses pulls up right next to him. And Reb Lipa is taken out of his daydreams, and he looks up. And there's a stately man sitting in the carriage, looking out the window, and he says, "Shalom Aleichem, Reb Yid." And Reb Lipa is very surprised. Who is this wealthy man with the beautiful carriage and the strong horses? He's talking to me, and he's saying, "Shalom Aleichem, Reb Yid." And at that moment, the man alights from the carriage, and he goes over and he says, "Shalom Aleichem. My name is Rav Hilvicht, Ari Leib Hilvicht. What are you doing here, young man?" So he says, "I'm traveling from Yerushalayim. My family is in desperate need of money. We're in tremendous poverty. I came to raise money for our family over here. I arrived today. I have no place to go. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm looking for the Jewish community." So Mr. Hilvicht says to him, "Well, you're in luck." He said, "I'm a member of the Jewish community. And it's very rare for us to have such chashuv guests, wonderful guests like you, a rabbi from Jerusalem. It will be our greatest delight and pleasure to have you in our house for Shabbos. Would you join us, please?" And Rabbi Lipa says, "Yes, thank you so much." He gets in the carriage. They ride to this palatial estate. He's never seen anything like this before in his life. They bring him inside. They give him his quarters, like a whole house in and of itself. And he begins getting ready for Shabbos. Shabbos, they go to shul. They sit him. He's a very prestigious guest all the way from Israel. So they put him up in the front with the rabbi. And then afterwards, they walk home to the house together for the meal. And Rav Lipa is watching the whole thing, this great stately man sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by his wife and his beautiful children. The food is coming, it's divine, it's delicious. The environment, the atmosphere is so wonderful. Everything is so peaceful. And Rav Lipa is looking around the dining room over there, and his eyes take him to the glass case, the break front that has all of his silver and gold ornaments inside. And Rav Lipa has never seen so much silver. Kiddush cups, silver yachts for reading the Sefer Torah, beautiful candlesticks, washing cups, all different things made out of silver, gold, so many stunning things that are shining and sparkling. And then right in the front, right in the middle, he sees a broken flask of shards of glass. And he looks at it and he says, "That is so strange. In this beautiful cabinet with all of the gold and all the silver, that suddenly looks out of place." And as Mr. Hilvicht is talking to him, he notices that his guest, Rav Lipa, is looking at that break front, and he says, "Excuse me, Rav Lipa, is everything okay?" He said, "Yes, everything is okay. Do you mind if I ask you a question? I notice you have so much beautiful gold and silver that is there, but what is that broken flask, the shards of glass? What is that doing there?" And Mr. Hilvicht smiles And he says, Rev Lipa, it's a very, very beautiful story. If you'd like to hear it, I would be more than happy to share it with you. And Rev Lipa says, please, I would love to hear the story. And Mr. Hilvich says, I was 18 years old living in Amsterdam. And I assumed all of my life I'm going to live as a nice religious Jew in the Amsterdam community, a wonderful, wonderful place to live. When I was 18, we get a call from my grandfather who lives in Milan. He has fallen ill and he needs help running his store. He had a very successful business. He needs help. So my parents said to me, Aryeh Leib, listen, Zayden needs you. We're going to send you to Milan, to Italy over there. You'll help him out till he gets a little bit better, till he gets back on his feet, and then you'll come home. Okay. They said, listen, it's good anyway. You'll get your feet wet in business. You'll see what's going on over there. You'll prepare yourself for your future. So I go to my grandfather, and he was quite ill, as they said. And I begin getting into the business, into the store. I start seeing how things are working. Every night I would report to my grandfather, tell him how we did, how the sales were, how we restocked, what we were selling, the customers that came in. Things were going very well, but unfortunately, several weeks later, my grandfather passed away. My parents called me and they said, Aryeh Leib, liquidate the business, come back to Amsterdam, come, we want you home. But I was actually enjoying working in the store. I said, listen, Mom, Dad, listen, things are going well over here. This business is doing pretty well under my care. I said, Zaidi is no longer here. Let me try running the business. Let me see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, I'll liquidate everything. I'll come home immediately. Maybe it'll take off. Who knows? Anyway, I went back to business and the customers liked me and I was making the business grow like it never did before. We became so successful, I opened up another branch. And one day in the midst of all of my hard work, I forgot to daven mincha. I said, no, it's okay. I'll daven tomorrow, business, you gotta make money, it's okay. A few days later, I was so busy working through the night to make sure the store was ready to go in the morning. I woke up late, I didn't daven shachris. No, what can you do? Business, money, you have no choice. Another shachris, another tefillin, another kriya shema. And before I knew it, after several months of the business taking off, I was losing my touch with my religion. Until I became very wealthy in gashmis, in money, but I became impoverished in my ruchnius, in my spirituality. I became a very wealthy man. I married a fine woman, we had a wonderful family, making more and more and more money. The business was booming like never before, but I had all but forgotten what it meant to be a Jew. Until one day I'm walking through the marketplace, and there are little children playing, happy, frolicking around as little children do. Except I hear this one child crying and heaving and sobbing. And he keeps saying over the same words, what will I tell my father? What will I tell my father? And I walk over and I see there's a little boy sitting on the ground. There's a bag that looks like something spilled inside of it and was broken. And he's crying uncontrollable tears and he keeps saying, what will I tell my father? What will I tell my father? And I go over to the boy and say, young man, what's the matter? And he can't even talk to me. So his friends come gathering around. And I said to them, what's the story? They said, this boy comes from a very, very poor family. His father was saving up money for months to buy one bottle of oil for the menorah for CHANUKAH. And he told his son, go to the store, buy the oil, and come right back. I don't want anything to happen to that oil. It's all that we have. Well, our friend went to the store with the money, he bought the oil, he was on his way home, and as he sees all of us playing, he decides to come and play with us. And the next thing he knows, the pouch with the oil flask falls out of his hand, and it cracked all over the ground. And he's crying, what's he going to tell his father? What's he going to tell his father? His father is going to be besides himself. Rav Hilvich looks at his guest and he says, at that moment I felt so sorry for this poor boy. And I put out my hand and said, young man, come with me. I'll take care of it. We walked back to the store. I bought an even larger bottle of oil for him. I said, now run home to your father. Everything is okay. And all of his friends were so excited. I did my good deed for the day and I went to walk home. But as I was walking home, the words of this young man kept ringing in my ears. What will I tell my father? What will I tell my father? And I said to myself, it's Chanukah? And I didn't even realize that tonight is the first night of Chanukah? Leib, how far have you come? How far have you drifted away from what it means to be a Jew? What will you tell your father in 120 years? And I kept repeating these words to myself. What will I tell my father? What will I tell my father? And I ran back to where that flask of oil had broken. And I gathered up all the shards. And I brought it home to my house. And I brought with me a new flask of oil as well. And that night, for the first time ever, my wife and my children, they were in shock. They saw me light the candles of the menorah. And the next night, and the next night, I kept adding more and more and more. Every night till the 8th night, 8 beautiful lights shining bright. And at those 8 days of Chanukah was the turning point in my life. When I realized that after 120 years, in fact, I will have something to tell my father. And so my wife and I changed. We brought religion into our homes. We're mechanech, we raised our children in the derech of Torah and of mitzvahs. And I took these broken shards of that one little bottle, that flask of oil, and I put into my break front, because that is the most precious ornament that I can have. For that is the reason that I am sitting here today. Said Rebbe Lipa, it was worthwhile to come all the way to Milan, even if I don't raise a penny for my family, just to hear that magnificent story. The neshamas of Klal Yisrael are so big and so radiant and so great and so awesome and so mighty. They shine light inside of ourselves. They shine light into this world. Even when you think that there's nothing left, even when you think the Greeks have destroyed all of the flasks of oil that are there, there's one, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I have saved, unadulterated, pure as could be. And you'll take it and you'll light the menorah. And the Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, this Ner, this candle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu shines in this world, it gets all of its radiance from you, my precious children, Klal Yisrael. And on Chanukah, when you're standing there and you're looking at the candles, don't run away from the candles to go eat another jelly donut. Don't run away from the candles because you want another latke or you want a little sliver of that roast. Rather, when a person is standing by the candles, see the light of your neshamas inside of there. And even more than that, our sages tell us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. And when He created the world, there was an ore, there was a light that was so radiant. Not the kind of light that you get from the sun. Not the kind of light that you turn on with a switch and you have electricity. There was an or, there was a light, there was a ruchniistic, a light, a spiritual light that filled up the entire universe. Adam Arishon, the Gemara says, the first man, he was able to look misayfa oidlam v'ad seifa, from one end of the world to the other. It was like a flashlight that went through all of the entire expanse of the universe. He was able to see it all. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that people were going to misuse that light, there would be people that would come along and they wouldn't appreciate the value of the spiritual content of this world. They would not make the right decisions, and they would end up hurting themselves, and they would end up casting darkness upon their neshamas. When they would take the light and they would misuse it for what they wanted selfishly, and they would not fill up the universe with the radiance of Hashem and the radiance of the neshama and all the kedusha that is there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, then you can't have this light. I can't let it be in your hands because you'll destroy it. If you take that fire, you take those flames, you take that ore, you take that radiant light that I've made, and you use it for the wrong things, you'll burn down the world. You can use fires to light candles. You can use fires to enlighten the darkness of the world. You can use fires to light your barbecue to make yourself a delicious meal. But if you use fire and you use light for the wrong things, you'll burn down millions and millions of acres of spiritual expanse in this world. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I cannot leave it in your hands. And it's called cave, and it's called the or, sheganos, it becomes the light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid away. And he hid it away for the tzaddikim, for the righteous, who will appreciate it, who will use it, who will elevate it, who will use it to illuminate themselves and the world around them. The cave and shira or sheganza HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'tzaddikim. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw this light that he set aside for the righteous, samach, he rejoiced, because he knew that there will be people in this world that will appreciate what it means to have radiance in their neshamas. He knew that there will be a nation that will come around once in this history that will appreciate the value of the light of this world. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu samach, he rejoiced, he was so exalted in his happiness and his joy. Shenemar, like it says, or tzadikim yismach, the light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid away for the righteous, it makes HaKadosh Baruch Hu rejoice and happy. Where is this light in the world today? The Svarim HaKadoshim, our more mystical works tell us, you know where that light is hidden away? It's inside the lights of your menorah. The same light that represents your neshama. The same light that represents the one flask of oil that HaKadosh Baruch Hu left in this world to light in the Beis HaMikdash once again. It's also the light, the Or HaGanos, the light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid away, because he didn't want people to misuse it and to destroy the world with it. But rather he wanted tzaddikim, the righteous of Klal Yisrael, to come along and to dip their hands into the light and use it to shine and cast beauty into this world. And that's the power, and that's the radiance, and that's the magnitude of CHANUKAH. This is not some little story of kids that were playing in the forest with their dreidels. This is not Maccabees with big burly arms and muscles. Couldn't be the farthest thing from the truth. They were Kohanim, Tzaddikim, Kedoshim, and Taharim who believed in the Ribbono Shel Olam. They never lifted a weight. They never ran a marathon. They never threw a javelin. Nothing of the matter. They only served the Ribbono Shel Olam. And as a result of that, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, their neshamas became the light of Hashem in this world. And they tapped into the Or HaGanos. They tapped into the hidden light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reserved for tzaddikim. And when you turn on the switch of those lights, when you allow to funnel into this universe the light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved for the righteous, then the world, our nation, our lives, everything becomes different. We don't live in darkness. We don't live in a world of confusion. We don't live in a world where we don't even know anymore what the value is of being a Jew. How to hold on to our faith, how to hold on to our pride. We should be so proud to be the Jewish people. Look at the world around us. It's combusting at all seams, going crazy. Look how precious and how valuable it is to be a member of this nation of Klal Yisrael. We have Torah, we have mitzvahs, we have midos, we have kedusha, we have Torah, we have self-control over ourselves. We have meaning, we have purpose. We have a vision of what life is all about. We have HaKadosh Baruch Hu on our side. We can open our mouths in prayer whenever we want. We have learning, we have davening. We are perfecting ourselves. And we have the lights of CHANUKAH. We have the lights of the menorah. We have the or, sheganos, l'tzadikim. We have the light that was hidden for the righteous. Kol Yisrael is tzadikim. Every single Jew has the potential to achieve righteousness in their lives. We just have to know that it's there. And we have to try. They say over in the Arizal that what a Jew in our generation could accomplish in 1 hour, is something that perhaps the Amoraim and the Tanoim, the great Chachmei HaGemara, the wise men of the Gemara, could maybe not accomplish in a lifetime. When you live in a world of darkness, one little candle is so bright. When you walk into a room and you can't see a thing and you strike a match, that one little flame that comes from the match, it lightens up the room. We're living in the Alma, the Shikra, we're living in a world of darkness, a world of falsehood, a world of deceit. We live in a world where the truth is concealed, where our HaKadosh Baruch Hu's identity is unknown. We live in a world where the anti-Semitism is on the rise. They don't like us, they never did, they never will, no matter how much we try to find favor in their eyes. We live in a world where the assimilation is no less than it was at the times of the CHANUKAH story. We don't call them misyavnim anymore, we just call them the assimilated Jew, 70% intermarriage. Children being raised today, they don't know they're Jewish, not Jewish. There's the tree and the menorah in the same window. Marry out of faith? No, not such a big deal anymore. This is the world that we're living in. A little bit of light. A little bit of value for our neshama. A little bit of glory of our past and being proud of that. Of what it means to be a Jew. To understand Nishmas Hashem, that Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, your nefesh, your neshama, your soul lightens the world for the Ribbono Shel Olam. And you attach yourself to the light that was hidden for the tzaddikim, for the righteous. What could be greater than that? What could be more empowering than that? What could give a person more self-confidence, knowing all the koich, all the strength, all the glory, all the might that is inside of us? If only we'll get out the bellows and we'll start stoking the flames that are inside of us. Take all those moments of kedusha that we had in our life, all those moments of inspiration, all the times that we said we're going to be better Jews, we're going to try harder this time. We're going to try to control our desires and do things for the sake of Hashem, not for the sake of ourselves. If we'll do that, we cannot imagine how much our neshamas are going to be lit up on this Yom Tov of CHANUKAH. And as we'll look every single day at the menorah, we'll remind ourselves that Mailin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin, we always go up and up and up. Little, what's one extra candle? One extra candle, one extra candle, a little more fire, a little more flame, a little more light. As long as we're trying, and we're trying to move up, HaKadosh Baruch Hu becomes so happy. He's so redeemed by our actions that he says, you are like that pach shemen. You are like that one flask of oil that I reserved for the lighting in the Beis HaMikdash. You I have saved in this generation. You have protected yourself in this generation. You have been unadulterated in this generation. You've been true to your Torah, true to your faith, true to your beliefs, true to your mitzvahs, true to your davening, true to your midos, true to your ruchnias, to your kedusha. You're a miracle who lights up the entire world. I want to leave you with one of my favorite stories of all on Chanukah. If I would not see this story in a reliable book, I don't think I would believe that it's true. But I know the author who writes this, he checks and verifies his stories. He would not make something up. The story goes back to a small town in upstate New York. And there was a mechanic in that town, beloved by all. His name was Harry Jones. For all intents and purposes, everybody thought he was a regular Christian fellow who lived over there in this small town in upstate New York, doing his work, minding his business. But deep down, lodged inside of his heart, there was a secret of Harry Jones. His real name was Heshi Miller, a Jew from Warsaw. He was living in Warsaw before the outbreak of World War II. And he lived a wonderful life. He had a father, his name was Rabbi Yerucham Miller, a Talmid Chacham, a tzaddik, a righteous man. Heshi was the youngest of 8 children. And his brothers and his sisters were always doting on him, taking good care of him. And he was beginning, as he was getting close to his bar mitzvah, he was learning the ways of the Jewish people, of his family, of his nation, from his beloved father, Rabbi Yerucham. And then the unthinkable happened. World War II, Nazis broke out. And there in Warsaw, they began making their selections, extracting people from their homes. Although their father tried to keep things running normal, Shabbos was as regular as possible, their daily schedule was as regular as possible, everybody was living on edge. Until one day, those awful Nazis, Yamach Shemam, they came into the house and they began grabbing the children as best they could, and Heshi and 3 of his brothers were taken away from the family. His father and some of his sisters were able to go into hiding. The mother and a couple of the other sisters were taken elsewhere. And at that moment, Heshi, 13 years old, baby, pampered by his family, his whole life changed. Into the cattle cars they were thrown, sent off to Auschwitz, and when he got there after that horrendous ride, shoved in there like animals, the doors open up and they see the sights and the sounds and the stench of Auschwitz. And he realizes that it's time to grow up. And within a short amount of time, there his brothers are killed. And Heshi's watching. He doesn't have his brothers. He doesn't know where his mother and sisters are. He doesn't know about his father anymore. And he's beginning to get quite angry with Hashem. Hashem, did you forget about us? Don't you love your people? Don't you love your nation? How could you do such terrible things? And as the war went on, miraculously Heshi survived. And deep in his heart there was hope that perhaps his father survived, maybe his mother survived, some of the siblings survived. So he trekked back to Warsaw. And when he arrived, he realized he was the last surviving member of his family. And at that point he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you forgot about me? You forgot about us. From here on out, I forget about you. He boarded a ship to America, burying his past in Warsaw. He landed on foreign soil. He met a young woman by the name of Stacy, also the survivor of a Holocaust family, the only one known to be alive from her family as well. They got married, and they began raising a family. And they said, listen, we are now the Joneses, and we'll live like everybody else. Nobody will know where we come from, not even our own children. Until his son Jason turned 13 years old. Henry, or Heshi, was so excited by this milestone, he took his son Jason, not that he knew that he was Jewish, but 13 is a milestone. He said, listen, Jace, you're 13 years old now. Such a great, great day. It's your birthday. I'm going to take you to the mall. We're going to go shopping, and you can get whatever you want. Doesn't matter how expensive, what store it is, whatever you want. 13 is a big number. I want you to be happy. I promise you I'll get you anything that you want. You promise me, Dad? Anything, I promise you. Great, I'm so excited. They get into the car. They head off to the mall, and they get in. There's people running around, hustling and bustling, so many stores, sights, wonders, all the different things. And this toy store, when you walk into the mall, is on the other end. So Henry has his mind on the toy store, and he starts walking together with his son. And as he's walking about a quarter through the mall, he looks and he sees Jason's not there. He turns, he looks around, where's my son? And he looks and he sees that his son is gawking into the window of an antique store. And his father says, Jason, come on, that's old stuff. Come, we're going to the toy store. He says, Dad, come here, look at this. Look at this. And Henry Jones walks over to the window and he sees that for some reason, unbeknownst to him, his son is staring at an antique wooden menorah. Dad, look at this. It's so cool. I want this. He says, what are you talking about? Right away, the memories start coming back. What is this piece of junk? Come on, I'm going to take you to... Dad, you said I could have anything that I want. I want this. He said, Jason, this is an old antique. It's a relic. It's an artifact. It has nothing to do with us. I'm going to take you to the toy store. We'll get you something new, expensive, whatever you want. Dad, you promised me. Whatever I want, you said I could get. I want this. So his father, always the man of his word. A promise is a promise, begrudgingly walks inside of this antique store. And he walks over to the counter and he says to the salesman, tell me, how much is that in the window over there? He said, oh, that? Not for sale. What do you mean it's not for sale? It's here in your store. I know it's in the store, but it's really just a decoration in the window. It is an antique menorah the Jewish people lighted on their festival of Hanukkah. And it was from pre-war. It was made by hand out of wood chips. One day it's going to be a collector's item worth a lot of money. We're not selling it. How much do you want? $500? I told you we're not selling it. $1,000? How much do you want? I told you so. It's not for sale. $11? No. $1,200? No. $13? No. $1,400. So the salesman saw that he had pressed his luck enough already. He says, $1,400? Yeah, I think we could sell it for $1,400. No problem. Wow, Dad, thank you so much. You're the most incredible father in the world. This is amazing. He said, but Jason, you know it's not a toy. I know. And they walk out of the mall with big smiles on their face, and the father trying to figure out, why in the world did my son, who knows nothing about the Jewish people, want a menorah? They come home. Jason runs into the house. He runs up to his room to go take care and play with this menorah, and the father begins telling him, I don't understand. Menorah, what does he have to do with the menorah? Now Jason's standing in his room, and he's trying to figure out, well, what do you do with the menorah? How do you play with this thing? You spin it around? Doesn't really spin so well. You throw it in the air. Hey, that's pretty cool, he says. You throw it in the air, and it flips around. You catch it in your hands. That's good. He goes again, and he throws it up again, and he goes to reach for it, and he fumbles, and it falls to the ground, and smashes all over the place. Sitting downstairs is Henry Jones, and he hears the crash. What was that? And Jason begins crying. No, I'm sorry. He runs upstairs and he sees all over the ground the $1,400 menorah broken into pieces. I told you, Jason. But Jason already was crying so much and he felt so bad. He's saying, I'm so sorry. And the father takes a deep breath and he says, okay, let me help you clean it up. And as he's cleaning up this broken menorah, he suddenly sees a small scroll of paper rolled up inside the arms of one of the branches. And he pulls out this little scroll and he unrolls it. And he sits there and he starts reading it. And the note is written in Yiddish. And for a full minute, he's looking at the note, very seriously, shaking back and forth. Suddenly, he lets out a scream, and he goes into a dead faint on the floor. Jason says, Ma, Dad, he just fainted. Please call the ambulance. His wife comes running. She gets the water. They pour it on his face. They try to bring him back. And he finally, after some time, starts coming out of his faint. But he's like in a trance. And he's in another world. And his wife looks at him. Her husband, who's shaking and pale white like he saw a ghost. She said, Henry, what does it say in that note? And he says, I'll read it to you. And he unrolls the note once again. And he says, he reads the following words. And I'm reading you here word for word the translation in English. The days of darkness have arrived, and the Nazis are rounding up the Jews of this town. My family was taken from me, and I do not know their whereabouts or even if they are still alive. I survive in a makeshift bunker that could be found any day, and my fate is therefore uncertain. Still, I have constructed this menorah, which I hope to light on the first day of CHANUKAH. I don't know if I will ever make it through the next 7 or to the next CHANUKAH, but at least I have done what I can. I have concealed this note in the menorah in the hope that whoever finds it will do me a great favor. Please say Mishnayos for my soul, and please try to perform as many mitzvahs as possible for me. It is the only hope I have left. Signed, Rabbi Yerucham Miller, the son of Rabbi Herschel Miller. Harry is sobbing at this point, and he says, my father was Yerucham Miller, and I was named after Herschel, who was his father. That means that my father is the one who made this menorah. Jason looks at his father and he says, does that mean that we're Jewish? And Harry pulls his son close and he says, yes, Jason, we are Jewish. And today's a very special day for you. It's actually your bar mitzvah. It's something I never thought that you would have. But things are going to change now. This note was sent to me by divine guidance, and the message couldn't be clearer. So Harry Jones, who is now once again Heshi Miller, moved his family into a religious neighborhood. They became Balei Tshuva, they became devout Jews once again, and he's raising children and grandchildren, generations of Jews that are following in the footsteps of their illustrious grandfather, their great-grandfather, Rabbi Yerucham Miller. The neshama of Klal Yisrael is so great. It is so mighty and it's so big. If only we will realize what it is that we have inside of ourselves And once that we do on this beautiful Yom Tov of Chanukah, and we become the Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, our light, our neshama becomes Hashem's candle in this world. We will light up our lives. We will light up our families' lives. We will light up the lives of Klal Yisrael. We'll light up the lives of the entire world. And we will shine the radiance of the Shekhinah into the darkness. And Be'ez Hashem, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu made miracles for Klal Yisrael by Yamim Hahem in those days, so too should HaKadosh Baruch Hu shine the light of His Shekhinah in this world. By Yamim Hahem, Bazman Hazeh, in this time as well. We should be Zeichim Yitz Hashem to find the light inside of ourselves and to shine it to ourselves, to our families, to the world around us. And in that way, Be'ez Hashem, our actions, our mitzvahs, our Torah, our growth will be a tremendous nachas to the Ribbono Shel Olam. A freilichen Chanukah, a wonderful Chanukah to everyone.
Thank you so much.